right, here we go. Another episode of Kanata on the Rocks. I am your host, Fadi Kuder, local realtor with Southern Group Ottawa. And today I'm joined with one of my best friends, truly best friends. We've been friends for about 4 years or so, Danielle Jolicoeur.
So you got my name right.
See, I got her name right. And I've been trying this for the last 4 years.
Amazing.
So Danielle here is the Gatineau Real Estate Matchmaker. Her and I have done some deals together.
That's right.
And she's literally my backbone support in the Quebec region.
And I appreciate it.
And I truly appreciate that as well, too, because I'm also her backbone support here in the Ontario. So what we thought today, I want to kind of shed some light on what Quebec looks like. The Gatineau, Alymer, Hull, that region. What does that look like from real estate perspective? Why did Danielle get into real estate? You know, we want to talk about some of the gems.
Okay. Well, first of all, one thing that a lot of people don't know about me is that I wanted to be a real estate agent since I was about 8 years old.
Hence why she's a natural.
And I think I was really impressed. My parents bought and sold a few properties, and I would go, house hunting with them and such. And we had an agent back then. Her name was Micheline. I still remember. And she was a tall woman, and she wore heels and dressed super nicely. And she would show us houses. And so even as of 7, 8 years old, I was dressing up with my mom's high heel shoes and doing open houses in my living room and preparing listings and such. And so I knew from that time that that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah, and if anyone has seen Danielle out in the wild, she's always very much ready to sell real estate.
Yes, I am.
She's always ready to go. It looks like she's about to go into another ball.
Yeah.
So at 8 years old, that's what you wanted to do. You wanted
That's
to go
right.
into real estate, and Micheline kind of, we don't want to mention her last name, but let's just say Micheline kind of instilled that in you at a very young age.
Yes.
What else that kind of drew you into that lifestyle?
I think that looking back now, I think the whole relationship aspect to real estate, I really, really enjoy. And I'm talking as much with clients, as much with other real estate agents, as much with, everybody we deal with in our business, such as notaries, building inspectors. This whole relationship building is something that stands out to me, why I love being in the business. Definitely not the paperwork part.
Oh, no. This is the part that we normally
not
hire
the paperwork part, yes.
Yeah. It's really also the part that keeps, those little bags in their eyes kind of thing. But we got to get it done for you. At the end of the day, that's our job.
That's right. That's right. And then now also what I'm loving about the business is just how it's evolving and the whole, I'm a very creative person. So marketing my listings, marketing myself, the whole branding behind the business is something I'm very passionate about. Social media, creating content. Yeah, it's just, I love it.
And for you guys out there, Danielle, the matchmaker, if you go on to Instagram, she's the matchmaker for real. You will see that what she's talking about there, the really nice crisp photos and all of the great content that she puts out specifically about the Gatineau region, what have you. Talking about the Gatineau region, let's dig into it a little bit.
Yes, let's dig into it.
What do you think makes the Ottawa region different than the Gatineau region when it comes to real estate?
So I do feel that you can get a lot more house for your money. Your money goes a lot further on the Quebec side. Properties are typically less expensive, especially if we look central to the city. I always look at it like proximity to downtown Ottawa, for example. You can get something like a single family home around $500,000-$600,000. Literally maybe I don't know, a 10-minute drive to downtown.
Yeah.
Whereas probably to get that kind of home in Ottawa, you would be further out.
40 minutes out.
Yeah, you would have to deal with the implications of traffic and such.
And it wouldn't be a single. Most likely it'll be a town or a semi, but not necessarily a detached. So definitely you're right. You get it kind of on the mark with the being able to get a lot more house for your buck.
The money, people who want to, it's an easier commute typically. I have clients sometimes that are looking for a property and they want to be able to ride their bike to work downtown and such. And people going back into the office as well, I think is an important component. I think that on the Gatineau side, we have a lot of parks, recreation.
I was just gonna say it's a lot more, centralized. For example, like if I want to go for a hike, that's where I would want to go. If I want to go for a quick little nature, that's like Pink Lake and all of those other
Which is
areas.
a very good point, which is why I do find that our market really exploded during COVID, and we found prices a lot in Chelsea go up because I found that a lot of Ottawa people were looking at wanting more space, a bigger home, and because a lot of Ottawa living people, does that make sense? Ottawa, I don't know what to say, but people living in Ottawa often do a lot of their activities on the Quebec side in the Gatineau Park, Chelsea. So yeah.
And it's also like with Ottawa, we're somewhat stranded by, or I should say, a little bit sort of guided by the fact that we have the NCC and the land, and it's really like if you want more land, you got to go a little bit more south, away from the river, because the river is kind of the bound, where we bound, and that's where you guys come in on the other side of the river, which is a little bit more expansion there. But with that being said, a lot of the good features, like nature walks, and all of that stuff is really all on the Quebec side because of the Gatineau Hills as well, too.
Exactly. Also, on the Gatineau side, for young families, it's very interesting as well because there's, a lot of incentive for having children and the government supports that a lot. And also childcare is a lot less expensive. They do like subsidized childcare. So I know that that is a big consideration for some clients.
It's huge for a lot of the clients, especially if they're a young family. Like you said, they're getting into the market. And, when you weigh the pros and cons, you look at it and you go, okay, well, the house here, for that same house, I'm going to be paying $700-800. Over there, I'm paying maybe $500. So I get to save that $300K that I don't have to necessarily pay over years. But then on top of that, for my 2 kids or 3 kids or whatever, and now I'm having to get cash backs and I'm having to get all of that tax benefit. But then you sort of pay it back a little bit on the Ontario Quebec tax.
Oh my gosh, I knew you were going to go there, right? Yes.
You know me too well.
I
always play the devil's
there.
advocate, right?
It's like people come and buy in Ottawa still, even though Gatineau has amazing
No.
No, I know it's
let's
up
be
to
fair. Let's
people's
be fair
choice.
to everybody. It's
I
all
know.
about, I think for this, it's all about, what works for you,
It's
for your
choices.
budget.
It's choices. But I do want to say also with the less expensive real estate comes also less expensive down payment.
Correct.
That is also a consideration. So I think that, if we are talking about differences with, perhaps living in Ottawa versus living in Quebec and the implications of that, one of them is the tax, your personal income tax. So 2 things I'd like to bring up regarding that. So you do pay more personal income tax in Quebec. So we do have to be mindful of that. However, I think that generally speaking, the other expenses that you would have are less expensive as well. So
there's a lot more benefits too.
Yeah, hydro is very much less expensive.
Property tax is less expensive.
Property tax, I think like insurance as well. Don't quote me on it. I'm not sure.
Is definitely less expensive.
Yeah.
I do remember back, and then I'm dating myself. This is way back in the early 2000s. I literally changed my address just so I can get my insurance.
Oh, really?
Like I lived in Quebec.
But then you had to pay your income tax.
It was cheaper for me, believe it or not.
Really?
My insurance was $600 a month here in Ontario, $600 a year over in Gatineau.
Oh, wow.
So with the tax implication and all of that, it worked out to be cheaper for me to drive.
Wow, that is really interesting. The other thing too that I told clients recently, just in terms of the tax implication, I've actually mentioned this to 2 buying clients recently. They weren't aware of this, but you are imposed for your personal income tax where you're living on December 31st.
Correct.
So it's really important if you are doing an interprovincial move to be conscious of that. So if you are buying a property in Quebec and you're closing on December 30th,
Maybe push it to January 7th.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. A lot of people are surprised to hear
Yeah.
that because your whole year is going to be imposed
Exactly.
on the Quebec
Exactly.
side.
Or you could close, but like not necessarily get your address changed until you're really done. But
Good point, but I guess the government, I mean, I'm not
You
a
just bought a
government
house.
expert, but yeah, you just bought a house. Yeah.
where is my money?
Yeah. So, yeah, just to be mindful of that. But yeah, that is the big big
massive
difference.
difference is, and it's not massive. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a plus and minuses on both sides. You have the, what's going for Quebec and what's going for Ottawa, and then sometimes you just gotta find your happy medium in the middle.
Exactly.
The cool thing about working with the matchmaker over here is that we're both talking all the time. So if we're talking together about you, the chances are you're gonna land where you're supposed to land.
Exactly.
If that means Ontario, fantastic. If it means Quebec, also fantastic. Both ways, we're happy for you, and we're gonna work together to make sure that that's gonna work for.
Yeah,
the client.
I think it is important for people to look at their options.
Mm-hmm.
Very much so, and make the right decision for them with their own criterias. For sure, I know Ottawa has a lot to offer as well, and it's really about deciding all that. But I'll have you know,
Oh, there it
another
comes.
difference that buyers should consider is that, did you know that when you buy a property in Quebec, you don't have to give a deposit with your offer?
That I knew, and I was actually
Okay.
waiting for you to bring it up because that's something that a lot of the times it comes up. Especially for the ones that actually do come from Quebec. Why am I paying a deposit? I'm like, this is Ontario. It's just different. The way it is here is different. You have to secure the deal with that deposit because we know that if whatever happens, if you don't close, they can hold that deposit hostage.
I know.
In Quebec, it's a bit different.
You know,
Why is that difference, by the way?
they get to hold on to their money a little bit longer. I mean,
Mhm.
in the long run, they will have to put their deposit into their down payment, but
Correct.
they get to hold on to it a little bit longer. I don't know. It's not common for people to do that. And actually during COVID, when there was a lot of bidding wars going on, I kind of tried that tactic. I'm like, because in our forms, we are allowed to put a deposit.
If you wanted to.
If you wanted to, it's just not common. We don't typically do it unless I would say if it's a bank repossession, they will require a deposit, but it's very small deposit, like I don't know, $2,000, like it's
Mhm.
very small. Or we can maybe require a deposit if the closing date is, I don't know, like 5 months down the road.
Yeah. And I know for the commercial side, I've done some commercial deals on the Quebec side with the help of other agents that do commercial on the Quebec side. It's definitely a
Okay.
must to do a deposit just
That makes
because, again,
sense.
you're talking about a bigger size deal and
And
this
it's
and that.
further later. Yeah.
Most of the time, it's like 6, 8 months out,
There you
maybe
go.
a year out. But also, it's the guarantee that the closing is going to happen because if you don't close, that deposit is foregone.
Is lost. Yes.
Is gone.
So I tried during COVID, we were trying a whole bunch of different tactics for our offers for our buyers to win. And I thought, Ottawa does deposits. Maybe I'll do deposits with my buyers. Maybe
Mhm.
it'll make them stand out from the 10 offers that are on the table. And honestly, it didn't do anything.
No.
It wasn't too fruitful. So I just stopped doing it.
I guess it's like at the end of the day, it's like
It's
they
the
say,
common.
beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? Like if the seller doesn't really think much of it, well, it's
Yeah, and it's not common,
Yeah.
so I guess it's not something. Another big difference is in Quebec, we use notaries. We don't use
Yeah.
lawyers to deal the transaction. And also, it's one notary that takes care of the whole transaction. So each parties don't have their own representation. So the notary is chosen by the buyer, and then the seller deals with that notary for the transaction.
and who pays that notary? Is it the seller or the buyer?
So both the buyer and the seller share the cost of that.
Mhm.
Typically, the buyer pays the majority of it, but the seller does need to release their lien, usually mortgage liens, at the land registry, and so there are fees for that.
Good.
So it is less, maybe half of what the buyer has to pay, but
So, as again, devil's advocate, we all play this when it comes to the buying and selling. There's always, no, I want this, this lawyer, or I want that lawyer. And sometimes some buyers are stuck in their own ways. Do you have that sort of same issue with the notary? Like if the buyer chooses a notary with the seller be like, I don't want to deal with that notary?
Typically, no.
No?
I actually have never seen that. I know there was an incident where there was a notary, I believe in Gatineau, that was because they can charge what they want.
Mhm.
And so they were charging the seller a lot of money, which was like very much different from the costs of the other. So I know there was something that happened with that. I don't know what ended up happening, but I have to say, like, typically my sellers just go with the notary chosen by the buyer.
Makes sense.
The other thing, too, I don't know if you're aware, but there's a new law that's come out. Part of the whole, I want to say French empowerment, which is probably
mean,
not the
in
right
a
way
way.
of saying it, but the Quebec government.
French protectionism.
something
I think that's the right word.
Is it?
Yeah.
I should have researched before coming on here. But all of the legal documents now are all going to be written in French.
So they cannot be in English. They have
They
to be.
cannot, all of the signed documents are all going to be in French. Everything's going to be French at the land registry. It used to be that the parties could choose if they wanted the documents in French or in English, but now it's all going to be French. If one of the parties wants the documents written in English, they can pay extra for that, but the actual document that is signed is in French.
Mhm.
So a lot of people don't know that. That's a new regulation that's come out.
I'll leave my opinion out on that one. But it's a good question to kind of begs itself with this. If I'm one of those buyers that don't speak French and I do want to kind of see everything sort of in English, how does that affect your work?
So I would say that regardless, the promises to purchase, so all the documents that we are using as real estate agents can be in both French and English. So if you are a buyer purchasing on the Quebec side, you can write your offer in English. We also have a document called the seller's disclosure in Quebec, which is a 13-page questionnaire about the house. So as a buyer, again, if you're purchasing a home and the seller's disclosure is written in French because maybe that's what the seller felt more comfortable with, typically what I'll do is I'll give them blank version of the document in English to refer to, and then also we'll revise the document together and I'll bring to their attention any concerns I may have. So there's that side of things, but a seller as well can choose to fill out his brokerage contract to sell his house or fill out the seller's disclosure in the language of his choice.
Okay, so if I understand this correctly, it's really just at the notary
Exactly.
and the land registry is where it's supposed to be.
Exactly.
All in French.
Sometimes it's really funny because let's say I'm working with English buyers. I'll just put it like that. We fill out a promise to purchase in English. I help them with the seller's disclosure. We sign it. Then we receive a counter offer in French. Then we counter offer in English. But I mean, at that
That's
point,
like a broken telephone. in a
yeah,
way.
it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
Each party is like holding on to
But
their
this
own.
is one of the reasons why in anywhere, like it doesn't matter if it's Quebec or Ontario, you really need someone to rely on when it comes to purchasing.
Trust
And
is so
trust is big.
important.
And the more important, like for everybody, like at the end of the day, you're not paying our commissions as buyer agents. You're paying the commissions. Like, commissions are paid by the
By
seller.
Exactly.
So why put yourself at jeopardy by not protecting yourself and have someone that's not only going to negotiate for you, but also they're going to negotiate their own commissions for themselves.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
why not?
I
do that?
know.
You know what I mean?
I know. I don't understand. We also have buyer representation agreements now. On the Quebec side, we were a little bit later than in Ottawa. But, as a real estate agent for a long time, it was just like, doing the motions and working and helping people. And I just was wondering, like, what is my real purpose in life? But then I did realize the impact of the advice that I give, and that when people are purchasing a home, like, this is their biggest investment.
Yeah.
This is like their like step stool to like wealth, because if they make good decisions, then they can, borrow off that equity and purchase something else and just grow their wealth. I feel like
It's
we have
a
such
house,
an important role.
One house can bring in 10 houses.
Exactly.
If you do it right, the first house is going to bring you 10 houses, 15, 20, if you're really smart about how you work with your
That's
money.
right.
But again, having someone that's going to stand behind you and support you, and more so than anything, be able to call you out when you're just about to make a bad decision and just say, like,
Exactly.
I'm sorry, but you're being an idiot right now.
Yes.
Or, like, no, you can't do this. This is going to hurt you in the long run for this and this and that.
I know. Sometimes I have to detach myself because I'm like, hey, Danielle, you're not the person buying the house. Because, like, I get so involved in it. I find sometimes buyer just can get, like, amazed with the house and not think about the long-term investment. I always tell my buyers, yes, I want the house that you choose to match your criteria and your lifestyle, and I want you to be in love with this home. But at the same time, I want to make sure that it will take on wealth and that it will take on value and that you'll be able to grow your wealth like that.
Hmm.
They don't sometimes think about that. But, this is why it's good to pay to have an agent supporting you, giving you comparables, paying fair market value for the property.
Yeah, and that's a big one as well too. Like, it is an emotional decision at the end of the day.
So much.
So a lot of the times I find, like, we'll be going around and, like, I'm just gonna, break it out here for you. I deal with a lot of immigrants, right? So we're always looking for a deal.
Okay.
That's just the way it is.
Okay.
So a lot of the times it's just you're talking and, like, this, and you show them that, you show them this, and they're always like, no, this is too much or this is too much. But then all of a sudden they see the one that they love and numbers don't make sense anymore.
Oh my gosh.
They don't even care about how much it's supposed to be. And that's when sometimes I got to be that devil's advocate and say, like, hey, look, you're just about to make a bad decision. It's a bit overpriced. Let's try to do this. Let's try to get you the price that you're supposed to pay, because what if, for example, you got to sell in like a year because of
Exactly.
a life event? On that note, actually, have you ever had a situation where potentially someone bought and then they had to sell for something major? And how did you deal with that?
If they sell for something major, I had a client who bought a house in Gatineau without having seen it. He was a military relocation and then had to sell in less than a year. And he bought during COVID without having seen it. Then he had to relocate because he had to go and be with his daughter. And we made him a profit. We made a profit. Yeah, I was super happy. But I mean, yeah, people sell for different reasons. I'm seeing, like, lately some estate sales. So children selling the house of their parents.
Mm-hmm.
That can be difficult. Like, I'm super emotional. So, oh my gosh, there's one time I literally almost started crying at the negotiation table because these sellers, they owned a condo in Gatineau and they were having major financial issues. And we had an amazing offer and they were, like, debating whether to accept it or not. I'm like, seriously, guys, like, you need to accept this, like, I was, like, almost crying. Like, I guess I felt so passionate about it. But I've also had, like, divorces, which is super unfortunate. But having gone through that myself, I think also makes me more attentive. Like, I get it, right?
You and
I
me
know
both.
how people are feeling.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people,
It's-
unfortunately.
It's funny you say that because, like, I want to say the last maybe 2 years, we've done about maybe 6 or 7 divorce, like,
It's
listings and things like that.
heartbreaking.
It is, and, like, you have to be very pragmatic and very sort of matter of fact with both. You can't take one side or another. 'Cause
Exactly.
obviously, that's just wrong. But in the same token, you also sometimes have to be a little bit of the little, hard hand, and just say, hey, like, you're being a little crazy. Like, that conversation is not happening here. Because what I do a lot of times, I'll put them in the same chat.
Maybe I'm more delicate than you, Fatty. I don't know.
I just have no time. I have no time, no patience for
Okay,
BS.
I'm emotional.
So, like, I'm very matter of fact with my clients.
Okay,
This is what
you're
it
like,
is.
we're not discussing this right now. Talk to the therapist about that.
Yeah. Like, the stuff will start coming up, and then, like, they're at each other in the chat room, and I go, guys,
In the chat,
I'm
in the group chat.
in the group chat, yeah. and
Oh
I'm just
my
like,
gosh.
come on, guys, like,
Oh my
no,
goodness.
no, it's not gonna happen. Talk to your lawyer about this.
We do wear different hats, Fatty. Okay,
Yeah.
we do wear different hats.
I'm just not a therapist, that's for sure.
You're not a therapist.
So one of the biggest things that
That's funny.
I find in referring clients to you is that they always talk about this white glove service that you deliver. Tell me a little bit more about that because I'm super impressed by it, but I
I
want to share it with the
appreciate
group.
that. I really appreciate that. And that is how I'm running my business right now is really word of mouth and referrals. Referrals from real estate agents across Canada, referral from my own clients, etc. I think that the way that I look at it when I have clients either looking to buy or to sell is I look at it like if this was my family, if
Hmm.
this was my parent buying or selling, if this was my brother buying or selling, what kind of advice would I give them?
Yeah.
That's how I treat it. So, I try to be very attentive what their criteria are. I try if they're a seller, I want to, maximize value. If they're a buyer, I want to get them the best price possible.
And maximize value at the
Yeah.
same time.
Yeah, I try to be, available and I'm very dedicated to my work. My kids are grown now. Two of them already moved out of the house. I only have one left at home. So I'm very focused on my work and just giving good service and understand how stressful buying or selling real estate can be. So I try to be
Yeah.
available for my
The
clients.
biggest thing that I've heard from some of my clients is like that I refer out again to you. It's just like she's always listening. She's always paying
Oh,
attention. And I go, yeah,
I
I mean,
love
that's my
hearing
friend.
that.
She always pays attention. Like, that's just the way she is. She's very attentive. She knows what she's talking about. And she's been doing this for a long time.
Exactly. I think experience has a lot
100%.
to play
100%.
in that.
You can't buy it. Like, it's one of those things where you cannot buy it. You can pay a hefty price for it, but you can't buy it.
That is so true.
Because at the end of the day, it's like, how many transactions have you done to get to that point that you know the nuances? Because a lot of the stuff that we do in real estate, it's not always cookie cutter. Don't get me
No,
wrong.
it's creative
It's
sometimes.
very creative. There's
Yes.
so many different things that are like, I don't know. I can't even believe I put this deal together, but I did, and this is how.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, how did that was crazy.
That
So
is so true.
And then one of the things that we do quite often, you and I, is like we have that sort of touch point every now and then. We'll sit down, have a coffee, and talk about
right.
some of the stuff.
The different
And
markets.
I'm always very amazed of the things that you do and how you've been able to do it.
I
So-
appreciate that.
I want to dig in a little bit to when did you start real estate and without dating you?
Okay.
'Cause you're very young and looking, and
Thank you.
but for the folks out there, I just want to show them experience, what your experience is all about.
That's right.
Some of the the transactions you've been doing are very, very special.
Yes.
A lot of the houses that you've sold are very different.
Exactly. So I've been in real estate now already like over 16 years. I don't even know now. Like I kind of lost track, but probably I don't know if it's going to be 17 years this December. So it's been a long time. And deciding to really start my real estate career was something I did for myself. So I did go back to school a little bit later once I had my kids to go into real estate. I started out in a team which was very, very good to gain knowledge because already the first year I had done like 30 transactions. So you gain experience from living things. So yeah, so I've gathered a lot of experience over the years. I would say that we can't pretend to know everything. And so if I have more complex transactions that I'm trying to figure out, or I'm trying to make sure my client is protected and what kind of conditions I can put in place, I don't shy away from consulting, for example, a notary and
Yeah.
just saying, hey, this is the situation. I just want to make sure that this is good. And I just want to run this clause by you. Can you take a quick look at it just from the whole legality standpoint?
No, for sure. And actually, it's a great point that you bring up. And I tell this quite often to a lot of the buyers that are just sort of like starting out and not really sure. If you don't have an agent that has at least a couple of lawyers on standby,
Exactly.
then you know that agent is not doing great because the lawyers at the end of the day is really what's going to back us up. Right?
Exactly. The whole legality.
And if I have somebody, like you said, the notary or a lawyer that I can just bounce ideas off of, mine, I've been dealing with them for a little over 25 years. My dad's lawyer, my uncle's lawyer, like I've been doing this for
So
years
you have
and years
trust.
and years.
You've built trust.
A lot
over
of
the
trust.
years.
So I'll
Yeah.
shoot him a quick little message. Hey, can you take a look at this clause?
Exactly.
And let me know, am I crazy or am I doing it right? Or like, do I need to change it? Because at the end of the day, for me, that might be like, I might pay for it, maybe not, depending on the relationship that I have. But do I want to put my client at jeopardy?
Exactly. We have to use our resources. And, it's obviously not for just any transactions,
Yeah.
but it's for the more difficult transactions. You want to make sure to protect your client
Yeah.
correctly.
And a lot
Yeah.
of the times, like we do have, like every home and every transaction is somewhat different. There are some basics, there are some certain things
No,
that
but
are
it's true that there are a lot of differences.
nuances. Yeah.
And yes.
Like we were dealing with one the other day that was, they have a solar panel and they have a contract on this and a contract on that, and they rent out some of the land. And like when you look into it, you're like, this is,
It's very different.
yeah. Like
Yes.
I definitely had to consult a lawyer on this and say, hey, I'm just about to put an offer on this. Take a look, please. Let me know what you think. I need about, a couple of hours. Okay, great. Yeah, go ahead. No rush. We
Yes.
couldn't do that in the pandemic times, but now
Yeah.
it is. It's, when you have that luxury of time, use it. Use it to your advantage.
Yeah, I think it's utilizing, not utilizing the people we have in our lives, but
Well, in a way.
but also, if I'm visiting a home and then like something looks suspicious, I can reach out to one of my building inspectors and say, "Hey, like what do you think of this? Is this worrisome?" So I think it's good. And again, it's about, like I was saying, relationship building, trust building. I think that that's really the basis of real estate.